Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today, because it is a holiday weekend, I have prepared a review of two talks that I did earlier in the year on Jupiter's entrance into Aries. So, in the first talk that you guys are getting today, we are going to be going back over the archetypal combinations of Jupiter in Aries historically. So you're going to see some of the themes to watch for within the collective. And this is just a way of kind of refreshing on some of the most powerful themes of Jupiter into Aries, which Jupiter just re-entered Aries this week, as you guys remember, right around the solstice. But it's a way of looking at the Jupiter into Aries themes as they have been expressing themselves collectively. So you'll see that in part one. Part two today is a talk that my wife Ashley and I did on some of the major archetypal themes of Jupiter into Aries and looking at some of the plant teachers that you can work with as Jupiter is into Aries. So since Jupiter is moving back into Aries, this is a great talk to look at from the standpoint of understanding, what kind of plant allies you might want to work with given the energetic expression of Jupiter into Aries. So hope you will enjoy both of these talks today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments, share your insights as we go along. It helps the channel to grow. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. As you know, we are also in Kickstarter mode right now. We are trying to gain the support of 1,608 backers by the new year. We're getting closer to that goal. But as we're coming down to it now, we have just a little over a week left to go, and we really need the support of everyone we can get, as close as we can get to 1,608 backers, hopefully more. When you support the channel, you're supporting me, my staff, the production of content, and a lot of time and energy that goes in 5 days a week to making all of this. It's part of how I earn my living. It's also how I pay my staff that helps. And we're trying to do something really great this year, which is to build an affordable reading service so that we have a service where people can come in and get an affordable reading from some of our best students. And we are trying to raise some of the funds we use will be capital to get this whole thing started, because it's a lot of work to get it all into place. So when you pitch in this year, you're helping the channel, you're helping a lot of good things that we're building as well. When you donate, you can find the link to donate in the description of this video or the comments section. You can pick a reward when you donate as well. You go to the Kickstarter page, $5, $10, $20. Everything really helps. We deeply appreciate it. We're really trying to push hard here at the end to meet our goal. We need a big effort here in the last week to get there. When you go, you can pick a reward too. So when you link over to the Kickstarter, again, you can find it in the comments section of this video. Pick a reward when you donate. And one of the rewards that we have is the upcoming program that my wife and I are leading called Roots and Spheres. So if you like the second video that I'm publishing today, which is a review of some of the major archetypal energies of Jupiter into Aries and plants that you can work with to deepen your connection to that energy. If you like that kind of thing, check out the Roots and Spheres program that we are offering. Roots and Spheres is a moon circle gathering that starts on January 19th in the new year. We meet before new and full moons. We study the astrology of every lunation cycle, and we pair it with plants that we are all going to be dieting together for the sake of growth, healing, and transformation. So this is a way for us of looking at each moon cycle of the year from the standpoint of doing intentional healing and growth work, trying to pair the energies of the planets with plant teachers. You can learn all about the program if you go to my website, which is nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, and go to Roots and Spheres at the bottom. Again, we start on the 19th. All of the classes are recorded if you can't make them live. The moon circle schedule is all listed there. We have everything recorded for you so you can keep it. We have a guide on all of the herbs and plants we're working with. So they are plants that are safe for anyone. So check it out. We hope that you will join us. And don't forget also that you can pick up this class through the Kickstarter. So if you link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video or the comments section, one of the rewards is this class is on sale. Several $100s off if you want to join using the Kickstarter as choose that as your reward. You can also bundle my programs together if you wanted to bundle several of them together. If you get a 4-class pass, which could include Roots and Spheres, the Masterclass series, Year 1, Year 2, Horary, Readings and Passages. I have 6 different programs. You could bundle any 4 of them together through the 4-class pass. And you can save up to 75% off on the classes when you get that 4-class bundle. So those are the great things that we're offering. Hope to see some of you in the Roots and Spheres program in January. Thank you guys so much to everyone who's supported us so far. I hope you will enjoy these 2 videos that we're publishing today. One, again, on the archetypal, the kind of collective mundane expression of Jupiter into Aries in history. And then the second one on the archetypal energies of Jupiter into Aries and plant teachers that you could work with as that transit proceeds from now until May. So I hope you guys are having a great weekend, that you will have a wonderful Christmas if you are celebrating. We'll do the Tao Te Ching for astrologers tomorrow as well. Otherwise, we'll see you after the weekend. Take it easy, everyone. Bye. Today, we are going to take a look at 3 major themes that Jupiter in Aries is likely to express over the course of the next year, while Jupiter transits back and forth through the sign of the Ram. So that is our agenda for today, and we're going to break it down into 3 different sections. We're going to talk about movement, we're going to talk about courage, and we're going to talk about endurance. And I'm really happy that my wife Ashley is here today. Ashley is an herbalist, and we're also going to talk about some herbs to match with these 3 themes, herbs that can pair as teachers, herbs that are going to be really good to work with given these 3 themes and kind of lessons that Jupiter in Aries tends to impart over and over again. I am very happy to have Ashley back, and I'm going to bring her on right now. Hey.
Hi. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have you back and to be talking plants again, plant medicine. In particular, we are going to be talking about Jupiter's entrance into Aries and 3 of the major themes that tend to come up with this planetary placement, and also talking about how we can support the development or cultivation of these energies over the course of the next year with some plant teachers, which you don't necessarily have to take the whole time Jupiter is in Aries. You don't necessarily have to take them at any particular time while Jupiter is in Aries. They're just good teachers to potentially work with to support and cultivate what Jupiter in Aries is doing. And that's, at least that's how I've understood it, and what you've shared with me as we prepared this talk. So let's look at let's remind ourselves, Jupiter enters Aries on May 10th of 2022. So that's coming up really soon. And this is a transit that is going to have some particular dates. So May 10th to October 28th of this year, Jupiter's in Aries. It retrogrades out into the late degrees of Pisces, and then it comes back again December 20th and is there in Aries all the way through May 16th. This is an energy that we talk about as, it's like cosmic spring. It doesn't mean it has to be spring seasonally where you live. You could be in the southern hemisphere and you're about to hit, autumn right now as we're hitting spring in the northern hemisphere. There's going to be dates here, between December and May of next year. We're in the dead of winter and Jupiter is in Aries, and the same spring-like qualities will apply. These are teachings that are linked in symbolism with seasonal energies, but are not literally tied to them. That's important to mention right away, because we're going to talk a lot about energies that feel very spring-like. It's the first couple of days of spring here in Minnesota right now, and so, that energy is kind of in the air. But I don't want people to link it too literally, because any of these energies are with us, at any time of life, really. And Jupiter in Aries is applicable kind of no matter what the weather looks like. So let's just get that out of the way first. But before we do that, I thought it would be fun, because the last times that, when I first started talking about Jupiter in Aries at the beginning of this week, I shared some stories. I was like, okay, just to give you a feel for what Jupiter in Aries is like, let's go back and do some biographical homework. So I figured if Ashley's going to come on as a guest, she has to be submitted to the same homework that we've all been doing lately, which is the biographical stuff. So 2010 into 11 was the first phase. And then we went back, and I think it was 99 to 2000, right around there was the second phase. So you have to tell us a little bit, whatever you feel comfortable with, but a little bit about what those periods were like for you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because while you were saying that, I was looking at the shirt that I chose for today, which is Born to Create. I don't know if you can see it with the, so it's like, that's such this energy, is this like, there's just this new energy of creation and wanting to create and do something new. So the last time this transit came through my chart, I had worked with some other people in the community in Maryland to create this, we called it the Raw Life Retreat. It was raw food. We had yoga, and it was the first time actually that I met you, Acyuta, my now husband. So, but that was like that retreat really kickstarted a huge kind of burst in my profession. I connected with so many people who to this day I'm still connected with. So that was like a real explosion of communal energy and yeah, growth in terms of my work. And then we opened up Sky House. You and I did, in 2011. We started, the wheels started turning, and we came up with the name Sky House Yoga, bringing together our business was birthed out of a home. We rented a house, and the lower level was the studio. On the upper level, we had our office spaces that we worked out of, and then we lived upstairs. So it was literally like a house. And sky, just the idea of how the sky bridges astrology, and the sun, the energy of the sun is infusing the plants. And so kind of earth and sky brought together, with sky and house being earthy too. So that was, I think that was, and I also traveled. I went to Peru, kind of like when you and I first got to know each other. I had made a big pilgrimage. I had just gotten out of a long relationship and was trying to process that. And so I traveled to Peru and started, just sort of like trying to process and figure out my next steps. And then you and I met. We were kind of on and off again until the Raw retreat, which I was like, he's really cool. But then it was on and off again. And then in September, it was like game on.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that well. Yeah, that Raw retreat was such a confluence of people and ideas, and was the first time we met and worked together. And then, by the fall, we were dating, and then very quickly decided to start a yoga studio. So
Yeah, yeah. It was a fast birthing process that happened.
So Jupiter and Aries too, like so many things accelerate so rapidly, and the impulse to start things and expansion meets newness and boldness, and let's do stuff. And that's the quality of Jupiter and Aries. And it was definitely around, I already shared my story, but yeah. And interesting, just for some background. So Ashley's a Cancer rising. So this Aries falls in your 10th house. It's the career place. So it was such a time of that energy falling into the career house, which it's about to do again. So that should be interesting as you're right now. As we mentioned last time, you're here on a sabbatical for a year, just kind of figuring out what next steps are. And this is a great energy to be helping clarify like what the direction is for lots of people, let alone if you have it in your career house. We'll go back to 1999 and 2000. What was that like? You have some stories there as well.
Yeah. So at that time, I helped to open up a health food store. And so it's called Roots Market in Clarksville, if any of you are in the Maryland area. But basically, I was hired on to help run their supplements department, because I was into herbs, but just more into health and wellness. So I remember, I was there at the groundbreaking. I saw the building go up. I was scrubbing shopping carts in the parking lot, labeling thousands of bottles. So it was, it was the birth and the creation of the first real health food store in that area. I also was in Australia during that time. And I had taken some classes through the university, James Cook University up in Townsville, in Aboriginal medicine. And so I was just really interested in learning about more indigenous forms of medicine and healing. And so during that time, also during our spring break, which was the fall, I took some herb walks up in the bush, up in like the Daintree rainforest area, and then out in the bush with some indigenous elders from that region, and learned about sacred waters and the plants and how they communicated with the plants, and knew when the plants were ready to be giving their medicine and when they were not ready. That really blew my mind. And so I think that was kind of the birthing of my path going into herbalism.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how Jupiter in Aries is one of the main characteristics is not just, okay, we're going to start something new, but it's also we're going to plant seeds. For example, we met each other. We didn't get married for whatever, four more years or something. We met each other much later in the process. We started Sky House. Actually, we ended up starting Sky House by the time Jupiter entered Taurus, but the seeds for it were planted while Jupiter was in Aries. So that's really, it's a fascinating thing how core experiences that inspire and start to open up a new horizon. It's very much also a part of the process of Jupiter and Pisces transitioning into Aries, where the kind of the winter dreams are transitioning into spring metaphorically, and there's this burst. I came out of a relationship, interestingly, at the same time you did. We both were getting
Yeah.
out of relationships, so there's just like this transitional stage and all these seeds being planted. It's really interesting. Well, thank you for doing the homework with us. Now everyone feels like, and I just got to take the spotlight. I'm not the only one who has to come on and share stories. And all of you should share stories too. You can always do so by using the hashtag grabbed or sending us an email, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. As Jupiter is entering into Aries, what's your story? Would love to hear from you guys. We're going to aggregate some stories and have a storytelling episode again soon. Well, let's just click over to the real-time clock really briefly and remind ourselves of what this looks like. So here is the chart for May 10th, at which point Jupiter is going to enter the sign of Aries. It will do so as Venus is also in Aries. Just did a video on Venus and Aries. Ashley's also a Venus and Aries native. So, having the two together at once is superhuman powers, especially for women and goddesses.
Well, that's what I've needed this week, since everyone's been sick and like
Yeah.
they're sick. It's been, and I'm on like full mom duty. Like I'm like, nothing will stop me, So, yeah.
Right.
So that's been
Right.
helpful.
Venus and Aries definitely gives like it's a good kick. It's like Wonder Woman. Well, so there you can see it. Jupiter enters Aries on May 10th. I just wanted to give you a look, and everyone give a look and feel for it. And it's not going to be long. As you can see, Mars and Pisces down there right below Jupiter in the fourth house, before Mars goes through a conjunction with Neptune and then heads into Aries and conjoins Jupiter by the end of May. And if you think this some of these energies we're talking about are explosive, wait until we have a chance to explore that one. And any of the herbs we're going to talk about as part of today's talk also go along very nicely with the Mars Jupiter conjunction at the end of the month. So that's for sure. Okay, well, there are 3 teachers that we're going to talk about for Jupiter and Aries, or teachings with a set of teachers for each. So as we were going, we had 3 categories we wanted to talk about today: movement, courage, and endurance, as lessons that we are often learning, or energies that we are learning to embody as Jupiter moves through Aries. And then we thought, well, we'll do a plant for each. But then, we decided to throw in 2 plants for each. And if I would have let Ashley keep going, there would have been 5 or 6 plants for each. So
Right, totally.
This has also been like very fruitful for us to do episodes like this. And the plan at this point is to, do more of this. And maybe we're even thinking maybe in 2023 of doing something like new and full moon gatherings, where we can talk about pairing plant medicines with teachings for the month or something like that. I'd love to hear if you guys would be interested in something like that. If so,
yeah, definitely let us know, because I think,
Yeah.
it would be really cool to, just kind of like have a community of people that gather together that take the same plant, and we kind of all geek out and share our experiences about it.
Right. Some plant dieting, some working with some plants, the stuff that would be, easy for everyone to use and not dangerous or anything like that. Excuse me. So 3 teachers for Jupiter in Aries. I'm going to talk about the theme astrologically, and then Ashley's going to pair us up with some plant teachers. So the first theme is movement. One of the things that can happen, especially when we've had back-to-back Saturn moving through back-to-back Saturn-ruled signs, Jupiter very recently moving through back-to-back Saturn-ruled signs, a great Saturn-Pluto conjunction in a Saturn-ruled sign, is that we get into periods of contraction, right? And those are purposeful periods that we have to work through, just like contractions are a part of labor. Closest thing I've had is a kidney stone, so it's the only thing I have to compare it to. But then there comes time for release, opening, and movement. And the transition from Jupiter into Pisces to Jupiter into Aries is often one where suddenly it's time to accelerate. It's time for momentum. It's time for movement. And yet there can be like the energy is there, but as many astrologers have said over the years about Jupiter presents opportunities, but success is sort of where like preparation meets opportunity. So you have to be ready in a sense to harness this energy. I don't want to say harness because it's not like we're in control of it exactly, but it's aligning yourself with it such that movement becomes possible. Movement can open things, in the way that, for example, like right now, I'm going to clean my closet. I'm going to clean out my closet because it's time. I know that just doing that is going to create movement psychically, psychologically, in other areas of my life. And it's exciting because I don't exactly know where it'll show up, but I know that that will create movement. So you don't even have to know exactly where to apply the movement with Jupiter and Aries. You just have to be committed to like listening and aligning yourself with where it feels like movement. Okay, it's time to move. It's time to move things in a direction. And then oftentimes with Jupiter and Aries, a cardinal sign, it's like, oh, you don't know exactly what's going to come of that, but there's a faith you're placing that moving forward in some direction in different areas of my life is going to bear fruit. So when we're talking about building movement or the importance of movement, like just in general, we have a couple of teachers, like plant teachers, that are going to be ideal to pair with the need for movement or the need to create change, shift of momentum, things like that. So on that note, tell us about some of the teachers you have. First, we'll start with nettles. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's start with nettles. So, if anybody of you watch me, I talk about nettles a lot, but this really is, it is the premier spring energy. And again, not necessarily seasonally, but just in terms of its energetics, because it really gets things moving. And my teacher, Matthew Wood, he often says, it's like an old woman with a broom who's just like sweeping frantically, like all of the corners, trying to get the dust out. And if you get in the way, she'll just sweep you and kind of push you out the door. So, it's got this very, it's a cleansing, moving, get up, get going, revitalizing type of plant. And so here's a picture of it with these very spiky. This plant is ruled by Aries, according to Nicholas Culpeper, who was a very well-known astrologer and herbalist. And so it has a very sort of Aries, Martian, pointy, jagged. It's got these stingers, why it has the name. It also is called stingy nettle. But it's, when you take this plant, especially when you take it as a dried tea, as an overnight infusion, it really starts cleansing the body and getting things moving. It is probably my favorite herb for boosting metabolism. And so, if we think about how do we prepare the body and the mind for this influx of Jupiterian insight and ideas and expansion, you want to get the cobwebs and dust out. And so taking something like nettles just to really get things moving, flowing, activating your metabolism, all the chimneys, as they call them, of evacuation. So the bowels, the skin, the lungs, the kidneys, all of those pathways start to get opened up. And, one thing that all of my students have said, and I've had many clients over the years, and myself included, is that it's kind of like caffeine without the anxiety. So a lot of people find that they can either cut down on caffeine or replace it, or just support their body with getting more revitalized energy. But it's really doing so through not depleting the body like caffeine can sometimes do, but actually giving your body all of the nutrients that it needs, including chlorophyll, which is just one molecule away from our body's hemoglobin or blood. So it's like putting extra blood. It's like getting a blood transfusion.
That's what it feels like too. I've had so
I know, I
many
see that
jars of
too.
nettles since I've known Ashley, and like I swear to God, when you drink a nettle infusion that's been soaked overnight, and by the way, well, I'll come back to this in a second, but you feel like you're drinking like liquid green blood earth, and
Yeah,
it's just like
that's a great
it's
description.
so supportive, and in terms of like creating movement and helping more intuitively and instinctually where to apply that movement. I feel like nettles is a really good teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, where's the doorway to sweep the junk out?
Hmm.
And which window do you need to open to get the airflow in? Like, it's
Cosmic
really good at
spring.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for sure. Okay, you keep going. What's our next one?
Our next one is cleavers. So cleavers is another wonderful green succulent plant. Well, I guess nettles isn't succulent, but they're both like really fresh, bright green plants. And cleavers is really cool because herb that you can think of it as like nature's scrub brush. So you can see in this picture on the edges, it has these like little hooks. And so what you can do, like when I was a kid, we would throw them on other people's backs as they were walking, and they wouldn't know, and you'd be like hee hee hee, because they'd have like strings of these cleavers on their back. And I do that to the kids sometimes too. And we guess I haven't grown up very much. But so it cleaves, it sticks. And so it's also used by deer. Deer love to bed in it. So they'll circle around. It's also something that old farmers used to use as bed straw, because it has this buoyancy to it once it dries. But the scrub brush piece, which is I think perfect for this idea of movement, is that it's like a scrub brush for the internal organs, and it really cleanses out the body and the lymphatic system, the urinary system, the colon. So it's and also the throat. It's also an herb that's been used to help people find their voice. So if you feel like you maybe are feeling a little unsure of how to speak or what to say or how to use your voice, it can sometimes just sort of kind of cleanse that area so that you can find that inner voice a little bit more clearly. And this one really works best fresh. So nettles works best, I think, dried. But for cleavers, you want to harvest it when it's fresh. Stick it in a blender with some water and drink it like a suckus or like a smoothie. You can freeze it also in ice cubes and keep that all summer long, and then throw those ice cubes into a smoothie that you make. But that's really, I think, the best way. Or if you have a juicer, you can juice it, and that will also get that. And it's very cooling. It's cooling and refreshing in terms of its energetics.
One question, going back to nettles for just a second, because this is something that I didn't understand. When I first met you and you're like, here, have some nettles, I was like, you're crazy. Those hurt. Why would I drink them?
Oh,
But
right.
yeah. So just so people can understand, like when you're talking about stinging nettles, you're not talking about, I mean, it's when they are dried or when you're buying bulk herbs of nettles and soaking them overnight in an infusion, the stingers are no longer a part of the plant. Could you just explain that piece? Because it
Yeah.
freaks me out a little bit
Oh,
when I
yeah.
first.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like this, we just went out. I went out with my daughter and check because we have nettles in our yard. And it's, if you touch them when they are alive or even freshly picked, those little stingers, which have formic acid in them, which is actually the same thing that you find in stinging ants bites, it'll sting you and it'll hurt. And, some people in back in the day, they would use that actually as a medicine for the joints. They would actually self-flagellate themselves with it, and bring blood flow to that area. But once it's dried, those needles dry out. And so that formic acid is no longer active. And then once you add that to hot water, all of the cells of the plant break apart. So you really, when you're drinking it, there's no sting in there. The only way that you might get a sting, like sometimes if I'm working with a big bag of nettles and there's dust that blows up, sometimes that will irritate my skin a little bit. So you can easily avoid that just by scooping rather than using your hands. And you should be just fine.
It's like back in the day before there were sex toy shops and 50 Shades of Grey was written, they had nettles. That was
right.
Sorry, my sick sense of humor. All right, so let's go into courage. Our second theme, Jupiter. Okay, so there's movement, and movement is just about moving things, cleaning things, like a spring clean or the need to just get some energy going in a direction. But there's this other theme that comes up, which is courage. I feel weak, but I have to do something that requires me to be strong. I tend to be passive. I need to be a little bit more assertive. The quality of bravery or courage is, remember, Aries is the sign in which the sun is exalted. So it's a Mars-ruled sign and is often associated with those things that protect the honor or nobility of whatever the sun represents. So a warrior that protects freedom, a knight that serves the king in like an Arthurian sense. So Aries has this quality of defending and protecting that which is noble, but that also means that there are sometimes like Aries is great. If you're ever being bullied, you hope you have an Aries friend, because it's the Aries friend that'll just, sock the bully in the face or whatever. Not that that's I do not advocate violence, but you get the idea, right? So Jupiter in Aries has a lot to do with finding strength, courage, especially for people who may tend to be weak or vulnerable. So that sense of like rise up. For example, in 2011, the last time that Jupiter was in Aries, there was a Tunisian street vendor who was being oppressed by the government, and he set himself on fire as a demonstration for standing up to, government bullying of people in the marketplace. And that in turn released this fire of revolutionary energy around the Mideast, which was very violent at times, called the Arab Spring, which in turn sparked Occupy Wall Street here in the United States by the fall, which, I mean, one of our first dates in New York City, we went down to see what was going on. And it turned out nothing was going on at all when we went down there. So we ended up, there was like nothing really happening. We didn't know. I was not like someone who was there regularly. And I was like, I want to see what this is all about. So we went down there. We ended up going to the Empire State Building, I think, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, random story. But Occupy Wall Street, anything where there's advocacy, protection, protest. It's interesting to me, for example, that we're hearing about Roe v. Wade being overturned and Jupiter's about to enter Aries, Venus is in Aries, that sense of potential political conflict and uprise. Like that is exactly the kind of energy that was present when Jupiter was in Aries. Of course, Jupiter was in Aries along with Uranus just entering Aries back in the early like 2010, 11. So it's a little bit different, but still, it's a very powerful energy in terms of standing up for things and finding courage and strength and things like that. What kind of planet teachers can help us cultivate or work with that, especially if we're someone to whom that kind of energy is intimidating or maybe even scary?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, people standing up for rights, like civil rights, human rights, women's rights, dandelion. I mean, dandelion, it comes through the cracks. It's like, hi, you cannot oppress me. It will, you lived in New York City, dandelions are everywhere. They're prolific. They're on every continent on this earth. So, they are very bold, very daring, very resourceful, and they're actually ruled by Jupiter. So they're, very expansive and bright too. It has sort of a very sunny disposition as well as being very expansive. And so this herb, I just think of, when people need to break through barriers, to break through cracks, to find courage, to alleviate either inner oppression, like self-placed oppression, or external oppression, that dandelion can be a really good medicine. And one thing that's interesting to note is that dandelion is a liver herb, especially the roots. And, sometimes what can happen is oppression can turn into repressed anger, or not repressed anger, just anger. And so what dandelion can do is it can help to transform anger into action.
Mm.
And I think that's an energy that we could really use right now, because there is a little, there is quite a bit of divisiveness right now. And so how do we take all of that fire and all of that Aries energy and anger and turn it into something that is actually going to uplift and, create more opportunities for more people? So, we can do that on an individual level, collect and let that influence the collective. So, I think dandelion root in particular as a medicine, rather than the leaves. The leaves are a little more of a diuretic, but I think right now the root would be a really nice medicine to take.
It's interesting because the first time I ever took dandelion was I had read that it was good for dealing with liver things and with anger. I had read it online because I was in graduate school and I was in a creative writing program, and I was writing fictional accounts of ayahuasca ceremonies. There's a plant medicine that's been really important to me, as most people listening to this channel know. And I had some classmates that thought it would be funny to mock, they just thought I was a crazy hippie, basically, and that I was into drugs. And, they decided they actually created a website that was a mockery of one of the short stories that I wrote in my class about ayahuasca. And I found out about it because someone told me. And I started taking dandelion because I felt this overwhelming desire to get into a physical altercation with one of the guys in the class who did it. And I was trying to practice pacifism, and I was looking online for things you can take herbally to deal, like, because I was into plant medicine because of ayahuasca. So I was like, what can I take herbally to help me deal with anger?
Mm.
And I started taking dandelion, and my anger went away. And I felt strong, but like I was able to like feel like I had control of those qualities, and I was able to find some harnessing of that that made sense. And instead, I went and reported them to the department of, which I thought was kind of like the weak way out, right? Like, you don't go tell on someone, you just punch them. That's what I felt at the time. And I know that's really lame, but like that's what I felt. And I really, to this day, feel like it was dandelion that helped me just go and report them and do the mature thing, which was still took a lot of courage for me, because I thought that was kind of like the weaker thing to do, to tell on someone. But actually it served the purpose and it got the job done. And I'll just always feel grateful for dandelion for that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the root medicine, is that it really roots us down into like, and long-term growth too. I mean, dandelions, within one flower are like 1,000 seeds for the future. So it's like, they're aware of how big, and they're aware of how big their spread can be, but staying rooted, drawing the minerals that they have, and staying low, lower to the ground, is part of how they pull it off. So that's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to take us on to our next one?
Yeah, let's do it. So the next one is mullein. So mullein is it's a lot of the plants that I talk about are kind of weeds, or roadside plants that a lot of us. Yes. Sorry, this is what happens when you don't have childcare. Yes.
You need to take someone's diapers when poopy
Okay, I will do that in a few minutes.
Here, how about this? You start talking about mullein and I'll go see what's up.
Okay.
Hold on, right. let me amplify it there.
All right. So thank you, babe. So a lot of these plants are kind of like roadside weeds, or they're plants that not we don't think of as like beautiful plants we might cultivate in a garden, but they are they're very wonderful plants. And the nice thing is that a lot of them are easy to find. So you might have actually seen this one as you drive along roadsides, pretty much through the Midwest, through the West Coast, East Coast here of the United States. They grow throughout Europe. But this plant, the reason why I think this is a really nice one for courage, is that it has this tall, long stalk. And in traditional medicine, and in the doctrine of signatures, we look at that tall, long stalk as being this, like, referring to the spine. And so for people who have spinal curvature, like rounded shoulders, or kyphosis of the shoulders, or Dowinger's hump, mullein is a medicine that brings you back upright. And even if you don't physically have spinal issues, but maybe it's just more posture issues, you're at a computer a lot. But posturally, when our shoulders are rounded forward, it closes the heart energy. It also compresses the lungs, so we can't get as much oxygen into our bodies. And if we can't get as much oxygen, we don't have as much energy. And so it's interesting that this plant does two things for us right there. Number one, it brings us more upright, helps to lengthen the spine. It's also a lung tonic. So in the doctrine of signatures, the leaves are wide and full. They have these little cilia, or little hairs on it, that look a lot like the cilia and hairs in the lungs. And so it helps us to take deep breaths. It's a really good lung tonic. It's actually one that I gave to Acyuta when he was having difficulty, experiencing some of his COVID symptoms. It was one of the herbs I gave to him to help him, because he was like, having a hard time breathing. So it just lifted him up. I told him to rest his head back and take some deep breaths. And I feel like this was one of the plants that really helped him get that confidence, that uprightness, that courage to keep breathing and keep going. Not that he was like not being courageous, he was, just having difficulty, but it really brought him upright and helped that breathing. So this is a plant that I think is really excellent for that. And you can use the leaves as a tea. Now they do have little hairs on them. So I recommend when you strain it, that you strain it through muslin cloth or cheesecloth, just so that those little hairs don't irritate the throat. Yeah. Oh, and then one more thing about it is that it was also used, in more pagan traditional medicine of Europe, as a torch. So it's also called witch's torch or torch broom or torch light, because when it dries out, you can just dip it in kerosene and light it, and you can walk through the woods. So it in terms of like lighting the way, in this upright kind of brightness, it actually literally can be a torch in the dark.
Right. So, disaster averted downstairs.
Thank you.
Temporarily, anyway. We're definitely on a countdown.
Okay.
So we're going to go into our third lesson for Jupiter in Aries, which is endurance. There's a couple of ways of talking about endurance. One would be that Jupiter in Aries tends to start things, which is good. But we also need support because one of the shadow sides or potential sort of blind spots of Jupiter in Aries is you can burn fast and hard, and then burn out. So in order to almost counter or complement or enhance or support this energy and what it tends to not do so well with, we're going to talk about endurance, because Jupiter in Aries can be about, creating movement, creating action, creating change, but it's fast. It sort of burns hot and bright and can kind of fizzle out quickly. So there's also sometimes the shadow of Jupiter in Aries is endurance, like sticking with things, seeing them through to completion. I mean, there is a sense in which some seeds are planted, and in a sense, it's like, well, Jupiter in Taurus's job will be to, sustain and carry it or something. But it's important because we can burn ourselves out, or we can get burnt out easily. Like another picture of endurance would be, Jupiter in Aries could be a picture of someone who works in a really fast-paced, corporate, cutthroat, executive environment. A lot of fast, important executive decision-making qualities, just kind of in the air. In order to make sure that you're not exhausted by living in an environment like that, if you're someone who was born with Jupiter in Aries, or if you find that the energies are just like throttling down really intensely, there is the need to make sure that you have practices that can sustain the energy. So it's just really important kind of buffer for this energy is think about sustaining, supporting, and in qualities of endurance. Okay, so along those lines, general teachings about Jupiter and Aries, which plant teachers can help us with those things?
So Eleuthero is the first one that came to mind for me. This is also called Siberian ginseng. Even though it's not in the ginseng family, it has the same qualities as a lot of our other ginsengs, like American ginseng, and also Chinese or Panax ginseng. So here we use the root, even though this is a beautiful picture of the berries and the leaves. Medicinally, we use the root. And this is probably my most used adaptogen. An adaptogen in herbal terms just simply means that it helps the body adapt to stress. It helps to regulate what we call the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is our stress response and how we use cortisol. It's like the gas and the brakes. And so I think with this energy of Jupiter and Aries, there's going to be a lot of pushing forward, but how do you make sure when to let up on the gas a little and when to apply the brakes a little, right? And so Eleuthero is a great one, and it's the one that I use the most out of all the adaptogens, because I feel like it's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's not too drying and it's not too moistening. So for most people's energetics, they tolerate it very well. And yeah, it's kind of like the most moderate of the ginsengs. Also, David Winston, who is an herbalist who wrote a book on adaptogens, he talks about how American ginseng is kind of like for younger people. It's for people that are aged maybe 20 to 30 or 20 to 35. It's a little bit more cooling and it's a little more moistening, which they need a little bit more of. And then Eleuthero is more midlife. So it's really for the 35 to 45, 50, that midlife adaptogen that kind of sustains the energy that you have in midlife. And then Panax ginseng or Chinese ginseng is for the elders. It's because it's really warming and very stimulating. So once the chi has gone down, you need that, you need a bigger boost of heat and more chi. And so it's more applicable to the older population. So I think probably for, a lot of us, Eleuthero might be I think in that way, it's also a really nice plant to think about. And also, American ginseng, but make sure that you source it from an ethically wildcrafted, or also from someone who sources it responsibly, because it is an endangered plant. So, whereas eleuthero is not, it's very easily able to be grown commercially. So it's a little bit better that way. And I would recommend taking eleuthero as a tincture. That's the way that I recommend it for my clients. And you could just take 2 droppers full in the morning, and that should do fine, or 1 dropper full in the morning and 1 in mid-afternoon. But it's not a great one to take in the evening because it can boost your energy a little bit.
Yeah, someone who took eleuthero last year for a good portion of the year, I was working with eleuthero on Ashley's advice, and found it really supportive of working out, especially in the winters, like in the basement of the house we were living in. I was like working out, and in the basement, the gyms weren't open because of COVID, and like just the feeling of being supported in enduring, like staying strong and enduring a long COVID winter. Like eleuthero was such a helper. Also, I did mention to Ashley, like the median demographic on this channel is 25 to 45. So I was just kind of telling her, like, that's 80% of the demographic of who watch this show. So don't be offended if you're outside of that youthful age range.
Yeah, sorry. I
Ashley was
guess, yeah,
talking
I
about.
should have.
I gave her that info, so
But
that's
the
on
nice,
me.
yeah, but the nice thing is, like, you can choose for yourself which one seems to be the best match.
Right.
And again,
Yeah.
those lines are very blurred, because if you tend to run really hot, you might like that cooler one, even if you are a little bit, more, in the middle life phase. So,
Right.
it can all be very flowy
Yeah. Yeah.
in that. And
And
then,
just one other thing that I would say about eleuthero in general is that, to my mind, it's knowing what phase of life you're in. Like, if in India, we talked about the grihastha ashram, which is like life is busy. Your kids, action, relationships, social life, work, and job. And in that phase of life, I feel like it's a phase more than it is an age.
that's a great point. Yeah.
It's like, if you're in a phase of life where things are slower, quieter, gentler, the waves are kind of moving like that a little bit more than like this, then that might be another way of thinking about what type of supportive plant to use.
That's a great point.
Anyway, okay, keep going.
Yeah, and then the last one is ashwagandha. This is a traditional herb from India. It's used in Ayurveda, and here we use the root as well. So this medicine is, I like how this picture has a heart shaped, because it's actually very nourishing. It's a very nourishing adaptogen, and it's gently relaxing. So when I think back to the last few times that Jupiter was in Aries, I wish I was taking ashwagandha. Like, I think that would have actually been a really good plant for me, because it would have just taken the volume of, like, my intensity down a little bit. Not like, the idea here isn't to completely extinguish all that fire, but to temper it. And I feel like ashwagandha as an adaptogen, which modulates, again, that stress response, and the stress response can be really taxing on the body. So we want to be able to modulate that. And part of the way we can do that is just by turning the nervous system down, the noise of the nervous system down, the mind a little bit down. So this one can be really good for people that experience anxiety, who have difficulty sleeping. The Latin name is Withania somnifera. And so somne comes from the Latin base of sleep, or like insomnia. So it has a long history of use for sleeplessness. And so this is a great adaptogen that can be used morning and evening, just very gentle mellowing out of the body's energies. And a tincture would be my recommended way of taking this one as well.
Yeah, I love ashwagandha. I've had another one that I can offer personal testimony about. I've taken ashwagandha off and on for, many years, always feeling like it's supportive of long hours working, of being in a lifestyle that's pretty busy. And just, it feels to me like ashwagandha is good for, I don't know what the word is, like, it supports male sexual health, I think, too. Like, there's definitely like a sense of, especially if you work a lot and you want to stay kind of buoyant with your testosterone. This for men anyway, I guess this is what would be my advice. Like ashwagandha is a really good support for that. Especially as like, I think as you're aging too, like I'm getting into my 40s, like ashwagandha feels like deeply supportive, and it helps me feel sort of not young, but fresh. It helps me
Yeah.
feel and like vital. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and the way it's described in, or actually the name ashwagandha, ashwa means horse, and gandha is virility. So it's like the way that they think of it in India is he who has the virility of a horse.
That's what
You
I'm
think
going
of like
for
a young
right there.
stallion, right?
That's yeah.
So if you're looking for stallion energy, ashwagandha that's your ticket.
What's the name of what's the stallion that will take over the world from Game of Thrones? You remember that? I
Oh
forget the
yeah,
phrase. There's like
will
a
mount
phrase.
the world or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
That's,
totally.
that's the part that I remember. But the cool thing about
That's
ashwagandha, though, is yeah, it was traditionally used for men, although it can be used for women. But there's another herb called shatavari, which means she who possesses 100 husbands. So think
there
about
we go.
how much work that would be. One is plenty for most of us. So, that would be another adaptogen that could be kind of the female side, and a lot of herbalists actually blend them together. So
Yeah,
just throw that
totally.
in for
Well,
balance.
we've had we've had naughty sex toys and nettles, and now we
Had
have
a poop
we got
emergency with our
there's been
daughter.
a poop emergency with our daughter. Now we're telling you about women with 100 husbands and men who have virility like horses. So you've definitely gotten your education for the day. That's what you come here for. So we're just giving you what you need. So if you want to follow Ashley's work, check out her YouTube channel, Skyhouse Herbs, where Ashley makes lots of videos about herbal medicine and the wisdom of plant spirit teachers. You can also check her out at skyhouseherbs.com, and Instagram, you can follow Ashley at Skyhouse Herbs. Thank you so much for being here and helping us unpack some wisdom for Jupiter's entrance into Aries. It's fun to pair the archetypal themes with plants that can practically help us embody and work with the energies. So we're trying to do more of that this year. That's like been a big intention of ours, is to keep doing this. And then again, we'd love to hear from you guys. How would you guys feel about monthly new or full moon gatherings where each month we worked with a plant teacher in concert with the astrological energies of the month? It's kind of something we've been thinking about doing. We used to do stuff like that all the time when we had our yoga studio. We haven't done it for a while, wondering what the interest would be, gauging the interest. So let us know your thoughts. In the meantime, that is it for now. There is a toddler wandering around with a diaper situation downstairs, who I pacified temporarily with some vegan puffs. So that's only going to last for so long. So as always, please like, subscribe, share your comments, click the notification bell for updates. Remember, transcripts of my talks can be found, in this case, our talk, can be found on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Don't forget the new class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, starts on June 5th. Hope to see some of you there soon. Thanks again, Ashley, for being here.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.